Before I begin, I would like to say thank you to our founding partner, Cinnamon Life City of Dreams, our official banking partner, Hatton National Bank, our exclusive media partner, Vijaya Newspapers, the Rukmini Tissanayagam Trust, the Udeshant and Angelica Fernando Foundation, and all our wonderful supportive partners and patrons of KALΑ edition 2025. It's so wonderful to have you all in this room today, and so many representatives from our local South Asian and international arts communities. I am honored to be here today with Rohan de Soysa, Chairman of the Sapumal Foundation, and Sunaina Anand, founder of Art Alive Foundation and Art Alive Gallery, discussing their institutions and the spaces they maintain, create, and nurture within our South Asian art world. The Sapumal Foundation was founded by Harry Pierce in 1974 at his home here in Barnes Place as a place to house the works of art of the 43 group, which he had himself guided with enthusiasm for most of the 50 years of its history. Housing over 200 paintings and drawings, the Sapumal Foundation remains the only public space in Sri Lanka and in the world that houses the works of all 10 artists of Sri Lanka's foremost modernist collective, the 43 Group. Rohan de Soysa became a trustee of the Sapumal Foundation in 1981, and he has been chairman since 2011. Rohan de Soysa undertook the precise and laborious work involved in gathering photographically the work in the Sapumal Foundation collection in 2008. These photographs serve as the only existing archive of the collection that were printed in the book, a select catalogue compiled and edited by Neville Veeraratne. In 2017, Rohan de Soysa published the supplement to the Sapumal Foundation collection, Select Catalogue, in an effort to include prominent works not featured in its first edition. Rohan received his photographic training in the early 1960s at the London College of Printing and Graphic Arts, now called the London College of Printing. Sunaina Anand is the founder and director of Art Alive Gallery. Over the last 2 decades, she has contributed to the development of the arts sector, promoting visual arts. Art Alive Gallery represents some of the well-known Indian artists such as S.H. Raza, Sakti Burman, Paresh Maiti, Tota Vaikuntham, among many others. To promote Indian art, the gallery, under her leadership, has organized shows of Indian art and participated in international art fairs in London, USA, Sydney, South Korea, Singapore, Dubai, and Abu Dhabi. In order to increase the knowledge and document contemporary Indian art history, she launched an independent publishing wing in 2004. One of the most recent publications, being one of its kind, is 20th Century Indian Art, a landmark publication tracing the history of Indian art across the subcontinent and South Asia from the late 19th century to the present day. She is the founding trustee of the Partition Museum and has helped in setting up both the museums, first one in Amritsar and most recently in Delhi at Dara Shikoh Library. I hope I'm pronouncing these correctly. She is of the founding members of Delhi Art Week, an initiative aimed at strengthening ties between art organizations and art lovers, including both public and private establishments, and encouraging patronage to foster the art ecosystem in the national capital. She also writes to the monthly column on emerging perspectives on art called Art Now in the New Indian Express, and is an art consultant to several corporate houses and prominent hospitality chains in India. I'd like to begin today with asking you, Rohan, to tell us more about your foundation, how it started, why it started, and the key objectives of the institution.
Yes, as you mentioned earlier, it started in 1974, and last month we celebrated our 50th anniversary. It started because Harry Pierce was the secretary. Why is this not?
It's not working.
Hello?
Just take this
No,
one. We'll get that one.
Take this one.
Yes, Sapumal Foundation was founded in 1974, And in December
Take it close to you.
in December we celebrated our 50th anniversary. It started because Harry Peiris who was the secretary of the 43 group and had bought all these paintings to help artists who needed money or encouragement. And he felt, apparently according to a lady called Margaret Gunaratna, who was an English lady who was librarian at the American Center, Harry got restless and he felt he must do something to show other people the advantages he had gained, the inheritances he had received, to in some way let the public also participate. So that was the idea, that was what made him start the Sapumal Foundation with two close friends. One was a professor called Arthur Veerapun, the other was Dr. Chris Raffer, whose daughter is very prominent in art in Australia. So that's how it started, and the objective was for people to come here, look at good art, and enrich not only appreciation of art, but to enrich their lives. We have a lot of people who come here, sit here for half an hour, and one of them, quite a few of them have told me, when we are under stress, when we are really stressed out, including ambassadors, they come here and sit here for half an hour, look at all the paintings, and go off refreshed in spirit. So that is what we want to promote. We are not, since we already have a collection, we don't necessarily have many exhibitions, but we do give the space for exhibitions if somebody comes and asks us for the space. So that is basically what we are doing.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how this collection of work came together?
This collection of work is actually Harry Peiris' own private collection, 90% of it. So, when his mother left this house to him, so he then, when his mother was alive, all these paintings were not up. But after that, he put them up. More or less as he put them up, they are still the same today.
Nice.
So that's how it...
and why is it called the Sapumal Foundation?
Yes, it's called the Sapumal Foundation because when Harry was small, he was the 8th of 10 children and the 5th and the 4th of 5 boys. And all the others were interested in sports, like cricket and rugby and so on. Harry was not interested in those things, he was only interested in art. So they used to tease him and they used to call him Sapumal. Sapumal because the flower of the Sapumal tree doesn't open fully. So they felt he was immature. And then there's another story that we had a prince called Sapumal. And Prince Sapumal of our own history, who actually came from Kerala, I think, he didn't smile much. Harry was also not given to smiling. In fact, there's a cartoon by Collett in one of those rooms with Harry holding a lemon. So to signify that he was a little bit, not given to smiling and so on. So anyway, the brothers and sisters teased him and called him Sapumal. And many years later, when he formed the foundation and was looking for a name, he called it the Sapumal Foundation and got his own back.
What an interesting story.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rohan. Sunaina, would you tell us more about your work with the gallery and how you came to begin the Art Alive Foundation?
Before that, firstly, I'd like to thank you, Saskia, for organizing such a fabulous program. It's great to be here in Colombo. I've come here many times, but honestly, this time has been far more enriching because I'm getting to see so much more art, and I could resonate all that we see here with a lot of Indian masters. So it's very nice. It's an eye-opener for all of us, especially for me. So yes, about myself, about the foundation, as the gallery is going to turn 25 years next year, We started in 2001, the gallery, and 2000. And at that time, just within 2 years of functioning as a gallery, coming from advertising, my background is coming from advertising and media, I realized that there's not much documentation which is there on art at that point. So we started immediately within 2 years of starting the gallery, a foundation calling the Art Alive Foundation. At that point, the foundation was aiming to do services in the field of art, and in the sense supporting artists and studios. But slowly we realized we started putting in a lot of focus on making publications. So first was documenting shows. It started very small with documenting, doing cataloging. And then from that cataloging stage, we realized that we need to. There's not much known about the Indian masters, Indian artists. So we started doing larger publications. Our first publication, which was a major one that we did, was with S.H. Raza. As I was working with him, I was having a conversation with him, and I go back to 2003. And I remember meeting Raza Saab, and he said, there is no book on me, and I've been wanting somebody to do a book on me. And I said, what about I take this plunge and work with you? He said, will you do one? I said, yes. So that's how the whole the foundation took that shape, and we did a book on Tota Vaikuntham. We did one on S.H. Raza. And those were books which were not only looking into artist works. So it was about life and art of an artist, because art is not separate from a life of an artist. So it was important to relate the two for the audience to understand where the art is coming from. So that's how the foundation started, and it's been the journey of the foundation has been as long as the gallery now. And then while working on these mono books on life and art of artists, we wanted to take it to the international book fairs. And it was in one of the book fairs at the Frankfurt that when we were trying to market these books, they had no idea about Indian artists, and they said that no, why don't you? So we had these few meetings, and we realized that they want to know more in a more holistic way about what Indian art is all about more artists. So we then took a plunge, and we thought, okay, let's go further into this. And so the direction of the foundation moved towards documentation, and that became the focus of the foundation. The other book that we brought out was Faces of Indian Art, and that is has a very interesting story, because this is what we came back as an information from Frankfurt Book Fair, and I happened to meet Manjeet Bawa, and Manjeet said that there is we have this very well-known photographer, Nimai Ghosh, he introduced me to him, and he said he's been documenting artists in the studios, and which was a very intriguing and very unique thing for me, because it was not an easy access into artist studios. And I was introduced to Nimaida, and Nimaida said that he showed me pictures, and it was interesting to see how artist studio reflects their personalities, and that shapes their art. So there's a whole correlation to it. So we collaborated with Nimai Ghosh, and he had done some photography in Bengal, and most of it in Bengal, and then I commissioned him to travel all over India, and and that gave me an opportunity to meet artists in their studio spaces, very private spaces they used to be those days. So it was so this book, Faces of Indian Art, documents almost 52 artists, starting from Jamini Roy Studios and Binod Bihari, and going down to and we stopped. I mean, we wanted to then stop it. Where do we stop? Because so we stopped to the modern masters and coming to those days mid-career, and so I met many artists during that time. I met Padamsi in his studio while he was painting, because we had to document him while doing work. Tayyab, Ram Kumar, so and then later Hussain Saab. That was just before Hussain Saab left India. So it was in Calcutta. I mean, it doesn't have, if the book is here, so one could have a look at the book. So in fact, I saw this book. It was interesting. About 5 years ago, I was here in Colombo at Barefoot bookshop. I see Faces of Indian Art, and you have no idea how happy I was to see this book over here. So, so this book was then launched in Art Dubai by Hussain Saab himself. And so they were the, I mean, this whole, our foundation moved with the demand of publication and documentation, and so we are here. We are.
Thank you, Sunaina. Yeah. And speaking of this question of where to stop, I was thinking of the Sapumal Foundation publication, Rohan, that was published in, remind me of the year, please.
2010.
So speaking of the publication and the idea of when to stop, Rohan, there is the publication and the supplement which you later published, you personally published. Can you tell us a little bit about your involvement in the initial publication, and then how you led to, what led you to publish the supplementary copy?
Yes, the initial publication, actually Neville Veeraratne, who's done a lot of books on Sri Lankan art, he lived in Australia. So he had been pestering the then chairman and possibly even Harry Pires to do a book on the Sapumal Foundation. But they kept on saying, no, it's not necessary, and so on. So anyway, 1 year he came here and he repeated his request. He said, you really must have a book on the Sapumal Foundation. So we said, well, thank you. We said, all right, we'll do that. And Neville said, I will do it. I don't want a fee, but just give me 7 copies of the book. But you have to find a photographer. So me being a photographer, I studied at the London College of Printing. I said, okay, I will do the photographs on the same terms, 7 copies. And Neville said, you must photograph everything in the foundation, including what's in storage and all the drawings and so on. So that meant about 600 photographs. And so I started doing that in 2008 and 2009. So those 2 years, on my spare time, I came here and did a bit at a time. And then in end of 2009, 2010, we finally published this. So that's how this came to be. But people are saying we should have a reprint, but reprints are very expensive now after the devaluation. So in the meantime, we had been gifted some other paintings which are in that room by Reg and Eileen Dimel, who are good friends of Harry Piris's. So those are not recorded. So I thought we should record those as well. And also a book by Richard Gabriel called The Cross, which he did as a tribute to Christ. And so he did only 33 copies. And he did everything by hand himself. He did the leather cover, the gold tooling, all the prints inside and so on. So I felt that also should be accessible to others. So I put that in as well into this supplement. And also some of the cartoons, which I felt also deserved more attention. So that's how those two came about.
And you mentioned that it was an expensive endeavor. Can we talk a little bit about your experience in publishing the book and the challenges you faced in funding the project? We had a wonderful conversation in the lead up to this panel. And I think it would be really interesting to share with the audience how you were able to fund the project and the experience with which you...
Yes, originally we approached the bank and said we want a 1 million rupee overdraft or loan. So the bank finally agreed. So then I told the then chairman, I said, I don't think that's a good idea because we'll have to repay the loan. And if we don't sell many of the books, we might end up like Sri Lanka did recently, with unable to repay the loans and so on. So we had a painting by a British artist here called Ivor Hitchens. So I said, why don't we sell one of the foreign artist's works, which well, the rest of the board agreed to that. So then we approached actually Christie's. We sent a photograph. They said, okay, it needs a bit of restoration, but it will be worth selling. So on one of my visits to London, I carried the painting with me and handed it over to Christie's. And the eventual sale got us more money than we needed for the publication. So we didn't use the overdraft, but we still have it. So that's how that came about. The second book we were able to publish because a kind donor donated the publishing cost.
And why haven't you reprinted this particular publication?
Well, because it's very expensive and very slow, actually slow moving. The first edition, we did 500 copies. 200 copies sold within a year. The other 300 took 10 years. So I feel it might be the same if we republish it.
Well, as we have a publisher on our panel, that brings me to you, Sunaina. Sunaina, can you tell us a little bit about how you work as a foundation alongside your gallery? You shared how you came to open the foundation and focus on publication. You've recently published a book which took 14 years to complete. Can you tell us how you approach funding to begin with, and then tell us a little bit more about this specific project?
Yeah, funding is an issue. So we see, when we started the foundation, as he very rightly said, it's difficult to find funding for books. So we decided that a part of our from the profits of the gallery, a portion of it will be going to the foundation, and that's how we've been able to build a kind of a corpus to fund our publications. And it's challenging, and at times it is also it feels good because you're giving back to the industry. So as a gallery, we are a commercial gallery. We are working with some of the finest artists who are very who've got a good market, and so we put a part of that portion into funding our books. And as I say that, I have a story to tell. The first book, when I brought out on Raza, I have a very dear collector friend who is very dear friend of the arts. I don't want to take his name. He would come to my gallery very often, and he would say, you're wasting your money. You could have bought the painting. Why are you putting this money? Because every book is almost about minimum about 20 lakhs expenditure to bring out a book totally. So he would always tell me, you're stupid. You're wasting your money, and you're putting into books. You could have bought a work of painting and all. So I would just gift him a book when he would say that. And now, these books have so much importance, because down the years now, if somebody has to look at, let's say, only Raza Saab, as we are talking about S.H. Raza, they refer to books, they refer to his documentation. So now I think one is realizing in the last few years that how important publication is. So I think it's also, for me, it is two things. One is that we are documenting the life and history of an artist. Secondly, we are also helping in authentication of the art, arts, and also it's a give back from the gallery. It feels good that you are leaving something for posterity. Being a gallery, from the community, if we are doing this together, I think it will be done, because books are never for profits. It never gets you profits. It's as he said, that he sold 200 in the beginning, and then the others took. And I have a whole storage. I have a space which I've built for storing my books, So earlier we would have less demand, but now we have much more demand. So I was surprised at this time at the art fair there was no bookstore, which was really sad. It was very sad. I mean, this is not a platform to talk about that, but it was.
That's the feedback, and they said that. How can we refuse people booths? People.
Yeah. So what we did was that we did a small. We never have a rack on our booth. So this time we had one. And I have Anushi here from my curatorial team, and there was so much demand for the books. So it's interesting to see that people who are wanting to know more about Indian art and understand the whole artistic process, they're looking at books and they're coming back more informed. So it is also indirectly helping all of us to do better business.
Thank you for sharing. That's so candid. I'd
I-
like to come
Yeah,
back to speak
Can I
about,
just,
your
Yeah.
journey with funding,
Yeah.
Rohan, because
Just sort of addition, a lot of researchers wanted to have a copy of this Sapumal Foundation collection. So what we've done is we do color photocopies, and the colors are pretty much as good as the original. So we just stock 4 or 5 at once, and when those sell out, we do another 5 copies, and so that's going on quite well.
Yes.
It's a sort of
but we
a,
are hoping that we may have inspired a meeting for after this conversation between the two. Rohan, would you mind sharing with us how you manage funding for the foundation?
Yeah.
You have shared how you do rely on rental income predominantly. We do know that you have begun a process of conservation for the collection.
Yeah.
Would you be able to share a little bit more about how the foundation works
Yes,
with these
well,
spaces?
it was a bit of a challenge. So what we've done now is a gentleman who was an executor for another artist had been asked in her will to build a gallery for her in Kandy, because she was from Kandy. But he said, if I put it in Kandy, there's nobody to look after it. So can we build it in the Sapumal premises? And we had a discussion. So we agreed. This is before I was chairman. And we said, we'll agree, but you give us 2 apartments on top. So then he thought about it and said, I can't give you 2 apartments, but I'll give you 1. So then we get some income from that.
Good.
Then we also rent out, there was a garage which is rented out, and behind, which you can't see from here, is another space where there was a artist who had been renting it for about 20 years, a well-known sculptor called Professor Sarat Chandrajiva. Then during the COVID times and the fuel crisis, he lives in Gampaha, he said, I can't afford to keep traveling from there, and I've sold my car. So he gave up. And then we found other people to take it over. First couple didn't work out. Now somebody else is using that, and he's giving classes in sculpture and painting. So we get some rental income from that as well. And now we are looking for someone for the garage. And we also have exhibitions here of contemporary artists. We've had about maybe 10 or so in the last 5 or 6 years. Mm-hmm. So we charge them a rent rather than working on a commission basis, and because then we know what we are getting, and they know what they've got to spend, and whatever they make is theirs. So that's how we manage the funding.
Thank you, Rohan. And can you tell us a little bit about the conservation project that you've been working
Now
on?
conservation, before we did the conservation, we had to replace a fan, one of these, but in the next room. So the guy who replaced the fan, he said, I can replace the fan, but the wood, the beam is rotting. And he said one day the fan will fall down. So that wasn't very good. So then I thought, well, we better look at all the other bits of beams and things like that as well. So bit by bit, we got a very good contractor and removed the ceilings piece by piece, and discovered that half of the rafters needed to be replaced, as well as many of the sheets. So that was done in 2018 and 2019. And so that, because there's no point in restoring paintings if the roof comes down, which has apparently happened in, because a lady came here from Albania and she said their museum, the roof fell down and destroyed most of their artwork. So that's how, so we started on this restoration once we did the roof, and now we were wondering how to restore the artworks, and I composed a letter and so on to send to art lovers. And then and I thought, well, I must set an example. So I actually paid and got one conserved. Then with my son, we did 3 more. And then for our good luck, a group of ladies came here and said, we'd like to help you to restore your paintings. So I said, yes, we'll put a little plaque, if you like, saying restoration done by so and so. They said, no, we don't want that. We love your space. We don't want any credit. But if you've done 3, we'll help you to conserve another 97.
Nice. Yeah, nice.
So which they're doing, and we've done 10 so far.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
10.
far. Thank you, Rohan, for so candidly sharing the experience of funding. And it is truly a very challenging thing. I think so many of us here understand the subject, and it sort of brings me to think about you, Sunaina, at the beginning of this publication, which you said took 14 years. And you
Yes.
said at the beginning of the publication, the landscape was very different from the end of the publication.
Quite
I'd really like you to share more about this journey of this specific publication, and also the challenges you faced initially, and how that landscape changed.
Yeah, this publication actually, yeah. 20th Century Indian Art publication, I mean, for me, it's been a journey of our art development that's happening in the last 14, 15 years. So this book has actually witnessed the whole landscape changing. When we started this, it was initially Parul Dave Mukherjee, our art historian from JNU. I approached her, and so this publication started with a conversation between me and her, saying there is nothing which is putting together the history of Indian art, the way it's developed, and we should have a publication. So at that point, we had no idea how much work we'll have to do and how much content that this publication, we will be having in the book. There was a little skeleton kind of a thing that we had decided to work on, looking in the pre-independence, post, and later, and today. So that's how it started. And she said that, it was, and that's when we approached Partha Mitra. She said that it's important to have 2 editors, because Partha looks at pre-independence, and he's a authority on that. So she said he would look at that, and I would look at the post-independence area. So it started with the 2 of them. We had this meeting in London in his office, in Oxford in his office, in his home, and he was very excited. He said this is something which is so much needed. This was way back in 2010, some spring time I spent with him, and we signed a contract. I like to go back to that, because for me also it's living history. So, and that's how it started, very innocently, between the 3 of us. We're going to start this publication, we're going to work on this. And the work started, and they started working on it. And my role was, see, I'm a gallerist. So for me, it was important to keep myself out of my gallery requirement. For me, it was an independent project as a publisher. So it's difficult to do these 2 roles because your own personal interest, your artist, everything, it's always there on your mind. But I made it very clear that I'm not going to interfere with the 2 editors, and they started working on the publication, and I must give all the credit to them to do this whole planning of the publication. And as the publication started, they started inviting art historians, experts in different fields, and they wanted to map the history decade by decade rather than yana by yana. So it was important to do that. So they did. So they worked on that, and while they were working on this, I met Rakhi. Rakhi was at that time a visiting faculty at the JNU, and so Parul said we must involve Rakhi as well because she's looking at the contemporary art scene. So then Rakhi was introduced about 3 years later into the publication, and then when the publication took its full shape and the work began, and it was very challenging. They were working on this independently but yet together, and once the content started coming, there was an editorial team which was in London that was looking into the editorial part of it. Then there was a lot of image procurement that needed to be done. That was very, very challenging because we had to approach a lot of private, we didn't want the book to have same images that you always see in different publications, at NGMA or some publications. So it was important to reach out to new collectors in the museums privately. So our office was set in my gallery with a team of 2 people, which was only working on doing collecting information, material, putting copyrights, photographs, procurement, and so it's been a long journey. And while we were going, the art scene was moving. At that time, KNMA was taking center stage, so it was important to have the role of a museum. We had a first private museum. Kochi Biennale happened. So Biennale, so there were a lot of sections that you see in these books. They are like boxes. So the design of the book, which these editors decided, was very interesting because my only role was that it's important that the book to have historical references for institutions, but I also, being a gallerist, wanted it to have a bigger reach where anybody who is interested in art tomorrow could be a student or a collector should not shy away from these books. They should look into these books. It had to be visually very rich. It has many boxes. So if you want to do those long reads, you can do short reads in the box reads. So so trying to make this book approachable and friendly to a much larger audience. So so then the section was included, which is looking at biennales, and so the book actually grew as the scene grew. So there were many chapters. That's why it also took longer time, because we must have this chapter too. We must look at this section too. So so that's how it's taken that long. And then it is the subcontinent region which was gaining so much more relevance and focus. So it was important to map that as well, as we've had shared histories, we've come through partition, and there is institutional building, a lot of challenges we all are facing. So, and we started seeing a lot of artists coming to India to showcase, from Nepal, from Bangladesh, about 7-8 years ago. So it was important. That was the last chapter, and I said, now we have to stop somewhere. Again, it's a part of stopping somewhere. So it was important. And another very interesting section in the book is there are interviews. There are 7 interviews, because we wanted to speak to first-hand interview with artists and art historians who witnessed the regional art development that has happened. So we reached out to Manida. It was very lucky. We were very blessed that we could do an interview with him. There's one with K.G. Subramaniam. There is one with Jogin Chaudhary. Yeah, and which is we wanted to actually reach out to Mr. Sabawala as well, but he was really unwell. I went and met him, so we couldn't do that with him. But we tried to cover all the regions, also to give a first-hand information. So we have tried our best to cover as much as we could, but as the art scene is growing, and I'm sure, like I met somebody the other day, and in fact I met one of the contributors, Annapurna Garumala, at the fair, and she said, when is the next one coming? I said, please, let us first enjoy this one. It's taken 14 years to bring out. Actually, we were supposed to bring out just before pandemic, and then the pandemic happened, and we had to stop. Also, we wanted it to collaborate with an international publisher. So there were many challenges, you know. So once the book was ready by about 2000, say 18, 17, 18, but we were in dialogue with Thames and Hudson, and as you all know, they're not very easy people to get on board. So after many meetings and many discussions, they understood that this book is important. And this book got the best, the summer release award in the New York Times, and it's been widely, seen, read, and appreciated, and even collected now, because we get a lot of requests. So I'm happy that the hard work put in by all the editors, my entire gratitude, and I would say a big thank you to them. They worked in sync with each other. So the joke was, when the book was out, we released it at the India Art Fair. We released it at the JLF first, and then the India Art Fair. And Parthada, who said very, very sweetly, he said, you know what, one thing this book did, and imagine in 14 years, none of us fought with each other. The editors worked in sync with each other. So that was another very, very nice thing to happen, because it's not easy to have so many contributors to work together, and everybody came forward, helped as much as they could. We got a whole lot of images from Lalit Kala Academy. We approached them. JNU also had some collection they gave us. NGMA gave us a collection. Private collectors, artists, I mean, our gratitude to all of them.
Thank you, Sunaina. I'm going to take the mic from you. Thank you, Sunaina. Coming back to the subject of accessibility and creating spaces for audience to engage, Rohan, can you tell us a little bit more how the Sapumal Foundation functions as a space for the public?
Well, basically the space is here. The public can come rather restricted hours, unfortunately, 10 to 1, Wednesdays to Sundays. And they can wander around the house and the garden. And so the spaces, some spaces, as I mentioned earlier, one has been given out as an apartment, then 2 or 3 spaces for art teachers. And so those are basically what the spaces are. And very often the guy who gives art classes, he brings his children here, and or the adults also. And in fact, one day, funnily enough, one of the parents used to come and sit in the library and look at the books and so on. And I was somewhat involved in the office. So when another group came, I thought I'd better go and see what's happening. I found he had been listening to me, and he was taking a group round. So he said, it's a wonderful space, and it's very nice that I managed to pick up enough to take a group round. So that's basically, we are not trying to necessarily expand. If I can draw an environmental parallel, I'm also in an environmental trust. That is, I bought some land and kept it as it was without interfering with it. And then some years later, 3 villagers came to my house, and this is after 10 years. We see you're struggling to protect this. Can we come and help? And they formed a society, and they are doing this. So at one of the early meetings, I told them, okay, money is always a bit of a problem. So I said, if you look at a forest, these trees haven't been built by foreign aid or foreign loans or even local aid or local loan. They have just nourished themselves with the sustenance in the ground around them. And that's how they have made into a forest. And then they give shade, they give water, the roots go down, create underground rivers which feed the wells. You cut the trees down, you lose all that. So I said, be like those trees, approach the people around you in the village. And so they started going on trips. They got people together to give various types of, say rice and lentils and things like that. And so now, last year, we celebrated not only the 50 years here, but 30 years of that society. So and Harry Piri's also was fairly simple in the sense that he wasn't, and we carry on the Sapumal in the same kind of way with his vision of sort of sincerity and simplicity. So I'm not saying that all the galleries can do that, but we are in a fortunate position that we can do that. And so basically that's how we continue.
Thank you, and thank you both and congratulations for the wonderful work that you're doing in both your spaces. I was hoping we would have time for questions, but I think we've run quite over time today, and we're excited about the next talk with Asia Society. Perhaps after this talk, you can approach both speakers directly while you wander through the gallery, grab a coffee. We'll have a short break before we begin with the Asia Society talk, Conversations with Collectors. Thank you both so much. And please have a round of applause.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Saskia.